Welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. Jim Doak is a Scottish bassist and singer who was a founding member of the Jolt, the Scottish band formed in 1976, starting out as a punk new wave unit and would become precursors of the mod revival. Original members were drummer Iain Shedden, singer-guitarist Robbie Collins, and Jim on bass and vocals. Later on, the band would add another guitarist in Kevin Kay. The Jolt was often unfairly compared to the Jam and seemingly forever to languish in the shadow of Paul Weller's band. By the time of the band called it a day in 1979, they had left behind an album, an EP, and a few singles. Iain Shedden sadly passed away in 2017, and in memory of Iain, Jim and Michael Rooney of the Primevals put together an album as the Elevator Mood in 2019. Well, welcome, Jim.
Hi, Greg. Thanks for inviting me on.
Sure. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you taking time out to do this. Let me switch screens. There we go. Well, take us back to the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in Bellshill Maternity Hospital in Lanarkshire, along with several 100,000 other people. It's the biggest maternity hospital in the area, so that's where I was born. And I was brought up in a town called Shotts in Lanarkshire.
Oh, okay.
I went to school in Wishaw, which is about 8 miles away, where I met Ian and Robert.
Okay. How far is that from Glasgow?
It's about 17 miles. It's between Glasgow and Edinburgh.
Okay.
On the motorway.
Okay. Well, do you have fond memories of your childhood growing up?
Absolutely, yeah. Kind of free-range childhood. Both my parents worked, so I was kind of left to get on with things with my big sister, who was a great music fan. This is the 60s, of course. Beatles, Stones, Who, Kinks, Tamla Motown, Gene Pitney, yes, were the soundtrack of my childhood.
Oh, okay.
I had a great childhood, played football, running wild. Yeah.
Right. And of course, back then, you're like me. Everyone left their household open, didn't have to lock the doors and things like that.
Yeah, pretty much. Shotts was an old mining town, and if you know about mining communities, they tend to have a strong sense of community. So Shotts was a good place to grow up. People looked after each other.
Good. Well, were either one of your parents musically inclined at all?
Not really. They both liked music. There was some music on my grandmother's side. She was a singer, and her brother was a club organist, pianist. So maybe somehow that filtered through.
Okay, maybe some of those genes filtered through to you. Well, what about your sister? You listened to a lot of music that she had brought home. Can you remember the first single or album that you bought yourself?
Yeah, I can remember it really well, actually. It's not a particularly cool choice. I think I was about 4 years old, and I got some record tokens, as people gave you back then, for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd heard Apache. An elder cousin had played me Apache by the Shadows, and I thought naively that every record shop in every town would have every record available. So I was taken to the local electrical store where they sold singles, and I asked for Apache, and the guy said, "We don't have that. All we have is these 4 singles in the rack." So I chose Walk Tall by Val Doonigan. It's my first entry into buying records. But I think the real first choice, when I had a bit more kind of about me, was Tired of Waiting for You by the Kinks. That's my first real purchase.
Okay. If I can get that. There we go.
Well, see, you have every record. Yeah, you should have been in the business back then.
Yeah. A friend of mine just sent me this because I didn't have anything by, it was hard to find anything here by Val.
Yeah.
And so he had sent me that, a nice gesture, sent me that, and I love his voice. I mean, he's got that really nice, kind of Jim Reevesy voice. Um, anyway, so you mentioned finding the records in appliance stores and
Yeah,
things. Yeah, that's how they started out selling them before they
that's
became.
right.
Yeah, they were like a little extra department within the store. Well,
Indeed.
talk about some bands and musicians that you were into early on.
Early on, obviously the ones I've mentioned, the kind of British greats, if you like. I was very lucky, and I had two elder cousins who were, they were in their mid-teens, late teens by this time, and they were hugely influential because they tolerated a little kid hanging around, and they played stuff like Captain Beefheart and the Magic Band, Love, the Birds. They were very into that kind of West Coast American thing. Along with a lot of other kind of quite for its time, I suppose, not mainstream records. So that was great. Of course, the Stones were huge at that time. The Faces
Oh yeah, oh
coming
yes,
on board. Small Faces were a great influence on the Jolt, particularly. So
right.
all those started to filter in probably when I was around 10, 11, 12 years old, being exposed to that music. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's one I picked up recently too.
Oh yeah, Alex. Yeah,
Yeah,
wonderful, incredible hero of mine.
yes,
I was lucky to see one of his very last performances in the Marquee in London when he had that. I think it was called the Alex Harvey New Band,
yes,
who made a really great record. It's very underrated. The Mafia Stole My Guitar is the
yes.
name of it. Check that out. Alex never did anything bad.
Right.
He was terrific.
Yeah. And I like his, I have a early album of his too, like early material. It was very different
Yeah,
than that kind of material. Yeah.
yeah, very much so. He seemed to go right through everything from the 50s through the 60s
Yeah.
until the kind of rock thing that he came upon. But
Right. The real theatrical type.
he was even in the original orchestra band of Hair,
Oh, was he
the
really? Was he?
the original stage production. Yeah, so
I didn't
he had some life.
I did not know that. I did not know that. What was the bass guitar, the first instrument you learned to play?
It was, yeah. I mean, I had an acoustic guitar. I wasn't making very much progress on it, and Robert Collins was a really close friend. He was playing guitar and showed me some stuff, but I basically joined the band. I bought a bass out of necessity to join the band, and that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I played a pretty mean electric tennis racket when I
All
was
right. Yeah. No, there's. Yeah. I mean, that's a good start. You've got to be able to,
right.
you know,
I can never
pose, I suppose.
I can never get it tuned just right though. Um, well, how about can you recall one of the first concert that you attended that you went to?
The first concert, yeah, I remember it really well. I was 14, and how I get let in, I have no idea. But myself and Robert and another guy at school bought tickets to see John Martin,
Oh,
uh,
I love
and
his.
in a bill with a woman called Claire Hamill, who's quite reasonably well known, and a band who I think disappeared completely called Bronco.
Okay.
Sorry if Bronco were out there, but I never heard of you after that night. So yeah, maybe that's something you like to follow up on, Greg. But yeah, that was amazing. John Martin again,
Yeah.
what an incredible talent, and to see someone like that when you're 14 is
Right.
very very formative.
Right. Was that before he played with his wife? Or
I think that would have been after. It'd
Oh,
be about 72, 72. Yeah, I think he'd stopped that duo with her, and he was certainly on his own, and he
yeah.
was using lots of Echoplex and uh, those kind of trippy sounds that he developed much further in the later albums. He was doing that stuff live, which was incredible. Nobody was doing that then. I don't believe. I think he was an innovator.
Yes, yes, he was a little ahead of the time there. Well, talk a little bit about the music scene around you. Right before you started the Jolt,
Yeah.
was there any kind of scene developing?
There wasn't a scene as such that was our age group or our kind of interests at that time. The local in Lanarkshire, the local bands played cover versions. They either played pop cover versions if it was a kind of dance thing, or if it was in a bar or whatever, they would play kind of rock cover versions. So you would be talking things like Sweet Home Alabama, the usual kind of bar band staples.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that, it's people love it, so fair enough. But it wasn't kind of what we wanted to listen to at that time.
Right, right. Was the Jolt your first band, or were you any bands prior to that?
But no, that was
That,
my first band. Yeah,
that was your first band. Okay, okay. Well, talk a little bit about how the band came together, how you guys formed.
yeah. I mean, it's the story basically is I was friends with Robert at school. Uh, Robert was friends with Iain after school, so they lived very near to each other. Robert had the idea of putting a band together. He got Iain into drumming, and they played in a friend's garage who played guitar. So they had two guitars and a drum kit. I knew Robert at uni, and he was telling me all this, and of course I was hugely interested, but a bit nervous that I didn't have any kind of musical chops. So basically, Iain and Robert took me for a drink one night in Wishaw, uh, knowing full well that I'd just cashed a check for my travel expense reimbursement for university. And next thing I found myself in the local music shop buying cheapest bass that they had. So that was I was kind of, I always said to Iain, I was really press ganged, shanghaied into it. But
Right.
yeah, it was great.
Yeah, and that's how you were introduced.
Yeah.
Well, you guys early on, you guys played live quite a bit.
Yes, we did, and I mean that was been looking back and all that recently. A few people have been asking us to contribute to books that are being written and things. Robert is still around. If you want to interview Robert, he's a very kind of intelligent guy, so that would be a good interview. But Iain sadly passed away, so as you said at the start. So yeah, lost my thread there. What we
No. Well, I was going to ask you, playing live, what early on, what kind of cover tracks would you play?
Oh yeah, I mean a lot of those came from my sister's record collection, to be honest. So it's kind of, you know, it's my life. Let's get out. Baby, we got to get out of this place. The Animals. Uh, what you gonna do about it? The Small Faces. Uh, Route 66, based on the kind of Stones' great cover of it on their first album. Uh, Bo Diddley, I Can Tell, which was inspired by the Dr. Feelgood cover,
Yeah.
who were a huge thing to us. Very exciting band
Yes.
to see. Um, yeah, those kind of R&B covers. Covered Stepping Stone and I'm a Believer from Monkeys. Um, yeah, that gives you a flavour. I can't remember any off the top of my head at the moment more than that, but yeah.
Right, right. We'll talk a little bit about how the music style began to change, what you guys started playing.
Yeah, I think we played R&B, but because we were a three-piece band, we played it quite aggressively to kind of fill the kind of lack of any other instrumentation. We played loud and we played quite hard anyway. So we stood out even on that time and being a kind of souped up kind of R&B band. But then, we started, one of the influences was listening to, if you could, on the John Peel show and things like pub rock was going on in London. And pub rock was like a kind of stepping stone towards the punk thing. A lot of stuff came out of that as people, the jury's out on that. Some people deride pub rock. I think it was terrific. You look at the talent that came out of there, Ian Jury, Nick Lowe, brilliant.
I think so too. I talked not long ago to Brinsley Schwartz, and I've talked to Ian Gom. I've got one upcoming with a guy from Kershaw Flyers too. So.
Will Birch? Yeah.
No, not Will Birch. Graham Douglas.
Oh yes.
Yes. And he was also in Eddie and the Hot Rods.
So that's right. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Another great band. Yeah.
Right.
So we were listening to that kind of thing, and then of course the punk stuff started. And what I would say there, I've said this before, it was a very famous. I think you can still get it on YouTube or something, a complete transcript, complete recording of the show. But John Peel did a 2-hour show called his Punk Special, and that really blew the doors open for a lot of people. Probably the first time a lot of people certainly heard people like the Damned, the Sex Pistols, the Clash were on that show. The records, the Damned were actually in session, but also he was playing stuff like the Seeds, again the Stooges, the Velvet Underground, and the great records of the time, the Saints, I'm Stranded, which was just incredible to hear all this in one show,
right?
With the Shadows of Night and people like that, was just like, oh my goodness, there's a whole world opening up here,
Right. Yeah. He really championed a lot of bands and really helped push them along and give them exposure.
Yeah, I think that show was quite a cultural moment for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, talk about you guys, the band built up a following at the Crown Hotel, Westshaw.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. What kind of?
So
go ahead. Go ahead.
What happened there? I mean, the Crown used to put on Saturday afternoon sessions in a kind of little ballroom space they had, and it was the cover bands and the rock bands that we talk about and their followers, kind of long-haired kind of guys, into that kind of scene. And Iain Shedden, the newspaper that Ian worked for was next door. The offices were next door to the Crown, and he was always in there having his lunch and a pint or whatever. So he bent the ear of the guy Jack Kerr who ran the place and said, "Will you give us a shot?" sort of thing. So he gave us a shot, and it was. We didn't go down at all well. It was pretty bad, we weren't what a lot of people wanted, that's for sure, in that space. So that was a bit of a trial by fire, but we did it, and he said, "All right, come back next week." And we ended up doing, I think it was 23 Saturdays in a row. And by the end of that 23, those by number 15, the queue was around the block. It was a bit of a local happening that attracted a lot of attention, and then it attracted people from Glasgow who, if you'll know this, but Glasgow had a ban on punk rock. Right. So a lot of people used to come out on the short train journey to see us at Wishaw, and it kind of helped that scene coalesce, I think, a little bit.
Yeah. So the band was gaining some momentum at that point too.
Yeah, playing I mean, I guess any musician will tell you there's nothing like playing live, and there's nothing like playing live regularly for your chops and for your confidence, So
honing those chops and then making that direct connection with the audience and the fans too. But back then, in order to make it in the business or be successful, any band had to go to London, and that's what you guys did.
Yeah, I mean that mold was broken shortly afterwards, but we were in that time where we were offered a deal at Polydor, and they wanted us down there, and it was great. Really, we played lots and lots of gigs in London and stuff. Hindsight, would we have moved if things were like they were maybe 2 or 3 years later, where Glasgow was a bit more independent and had great records labels and great bands deciding to stay there? Possibly, but I don't look at it that way. I loved London. I loved what we did in London, and yeah.
No, you couldn't turn down that opportunity either. No. Yeah, but you did go there, and you were the first Scottish punk new wave band to sign to a major label, Polydor. Yeah.
That would have. I think that's. I mean, people. Yeah, there's. I mean, I don't like to blow my own trumpet. I think we were, but what I always say to that, if somebody else has got an opinion, fine. I'm not picky.
You were one of the first. I should have said that. Maybe I should.
Yeah, I think we were the first to sign to a major.
Okay.
The guys that came later.
Yeah. Well, your first single, 1977's "All I Can Do." Do you remember the recording sessions for that?
The first single was actually "You're Cold."
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I remember that session really well. Obviously, it was a big point in our lives. Moving to London and recording. So I remember it really well. We weren't particularly happy. It was a small studio in Polydor's headquarters. Chris Parry, who'd signed us, was producing. I don't think Chris sees this. I'm sure he'll say maybe it took him a while to get his production chops, and he was definitely greater later on. But I think the main thing about that session was the engineer just wasn't in tune with the kind of things that we wanted to do, and the sounds are a little bit kind of lackluster. So yeah, but it's a decent enough record. People like it, and opportunity missed for us to record something really powerful, but it got something out there.
Right. Can you remember how the song did fare? How it went down?
The song live was a favourite of the live audience, but the single, I think it sold okay, but nothing to trouble the charts or anything like that.
Okay, all right. Well, it was your you did get something on down, recorded. Interesting doing these chats, and you brought this up a little earlier. I had supposed to have had a chat. We got canceled with Maurice Bacon, who was the drummer in Love Affair with Steve Ellis. And Steve's vocals are oftentimes compared to Steve Marriott. And you brought up the Small Faces earlier. And then you guys did cover What You Gonna Do About It. And then released that as a single in 78. And I actually like your cover version better, honestly, than the original. It's more upbeat. It's got more of a punch to it.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think it's a good record. I mean, I don't compare it, but because we loved the Small Faces, we were totally in awe of Stevie Marriott. Me and Robert saw him at the famous Glasgow Apollo playing with Humble Pie. And he was a life force, incredible performer.
Right, it was Peter Frampton, and
yeah.
The first song I actually heard from the Jolt was your last single, "I Can't Wait," and it was on a Various Artists compilation. You may be aware of it. It's "Shake Some Action," volume.
I think 5. I've seen that. Yeah. Yeah.
There were several volumes. This was volume 5. It's a power pop collection from the UK and Ireland. That's what it was. But I take it the title of the compilation is from a Flamin' Groovy song. Shake Some Action.
Big favorites of mine. I love the Groovies.
Yes. I always like that song. Yeah, I like a lot of their material too. Yes. So that was my first, and I think that's a really nice track too. Yeah, I can't wait.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you. Do you think it was fair to compare the band to the Jam, like Scotland's answer to the Jam?
I think it was almost inevitable, really. And to be honest, we didn't help ourselves. We're young guys, we're naive. We thought, so what? Three-piece band playing souped up R&B, moving into kind of more punk stuff, a lot of energy, And then we made the faux pas of buying suits. It's like shooting yourself in the foot, isn't it? Really, you're being compared anyway, so you go, well, we'll just get some suits then. Yeah. But that whole story of those suits was basically, it was naivety. We wanted to do a cover like those brilliant covers from the 60s, an album cover, where you see, a Small Faces cover, for example, or the one that we loved was the Stones' first album cover. So that kind of suited up, very dark, kind of look. That was what we were after. We wanted to look as a homage to those kind of things. So then that the cover's a good cover, I think, but in hindsight,
right. And then
the weren't a great idea.
And then the name too, starting with J.
Well, yeah, I mean that is we couldn't do anything about that because the way we got our name was we couldn't think of a name. Really terrible, and we said we need something. So so the first decent word that's on the page of the dictionary that we open it at, it was Iain that opened it. That was it. That was how the name got about.
That's what you went with. Well, the mentioning the eponymous album was released in the summer of '78.
Yeah.
And then how long after the release of the album, you guys brought in a second guitarist in Kevin Kay?
I'm not that great on dates, but I think if that was summer '78, I think we brought Kevin in fairly soon after, towards the end of that year. And of course, the band didn't really go much into '79, so it was kind of like it was only for a short period. But Kevin was great. He brought lots of energy, lots of good ideas song wise. But it just kind of petered out at that point, really. So the album, we toured with the album, and that was great. We played with the Jam, we played with Generation X. The Motors, who were quite a big deal at that time, probably not the best match for us, but we played to big audiences. They had a #1 record at the time, so it was all very exciting. That whole period, the whole of '78 was kind of like a blur, really.
Just kind of went by real fast. Yeah, I was going to ask you by becoming a 4-piece, was that like maybe a last ditch effort to try to differentiate from the Jam? 4-piece.
No, it was strictly a musical thing. Robert kind of is still a very talented guy. He was carrying a lot of burden. He was the lead and rhythm guitar player, singer, and occasionally he would play harmonica. So that we needed another pair of hands, and to flesh out the sound a bit. Some of the other songs that we did later, there was an EP later which was not great, but you could see what we were trying to do. We were trying to branch out a little bit in terms of the orchestration and
yes,
structure of the songs.
Well, Paul Weller was a fan of the band, and speaking of that EP, he wrote the song "Seesaw."
That's right, yeah.
yeah, and it was on that EP and releases a single. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
nice track. That's nice. I mean, I
Yeah.
like almost everything he touches. I
Yeah.
like. Go ahead.
The jam and Paul and his father were very, very supportive of us. Bearing in mind we were three young guys in London for the first time. Those people were very kind to us in terms of how they treated us, inviting us to play support, making sure that we were always given a sound check, all that kind of thing, treated well. Nothing but respect for Paul and his family, and the other guys in the band too.
Right. Well, it was good that he was, and didn't really see you guys as a threat, and just,
No, I mean, I don't think. I mean, his career was in the ascendancy, ours was on the kind of
right.
down curve. So I don't think he saw us as a threat, but he genuinely liked us, I think, at that time. So and we had good times touring with them. They were nice people.
Yeah. How many times did you open for the Jam? You're
I couldn't put a figure on it, but I think it was a little mini tour kind of thing we did with them. We played places like Blackburn, I remember. So there was three or four, or five of those. We played support in Scotland to them a couple of times. We played at Hammersmith Odeon and the
mm,
Glasgow Apollo with them. So maybe I would say 10, no more than that. But yeah.
quite a few times. Uh,
Yeah.
how about looking back on playing live and other memorable live shows that you can recall?
Um, well, I suppose I mentioned the two biggest shows we did were Hammersmith Odeon with the Jam and Secret Affair, and I think that was the same lineup in Glasgow. And playing Glasgow Apollo was, I mean, that's where we had seen all the people that we loved. It was like that ballroom in Detroit that people talk about.
Yeah.
It was the Glasgow version of that. It was a wild old theatre. And it was just incredible to play on the stage there. Very, very moving kind of moment to
Wow.
go on that stage.
Did it compare to the New York Apollo? I wonder
I don't.
where the name came from. I was just curious about
Yeah, I'm not sure. It was a dance. It was a cinema. Sorry, originally called Green's Playhouse.
it. Okay.
So, and it was Green's Playhouse in the 70s when we were going to gigs and things, and then it was renamed the Apollo. So I don't think it was after the New York one, but I wouldn't know. But it was the audience were phenomenal. I mean, some of the some of the gigs we saw there. I saw the Stones and the Meters
Ah.
playing there, and you really thought the place was going to fall down. It was incredible.
Oh, that's fun. Well, yeah, I was going to mention too that I reached out to Bruce Foxton,
Oh,
uh,
aye.
about on the Jam. I mean, it's the new Jam, I guess.
Yeah.
He's carrying the name, and the press agent or manager, whatever, whoever runs the site said, well, Bruce is not doing interviews, but the lead singer, whoever that is now, I don't even remember the name,
Yeah.
is. And I thought, I mean, if I can't talk to an original member, I don't really want to, that's how I feel.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah.
Right, right. I mean, I'm sure this guy would have some good stories to tell, but I want to talk to, go back. That's what I like to do is, the origins and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, uh, Iain did pass away in 2017, correct?
He did. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Was it sudden or had he been ill for some time?
No, it was very sudden. It was a heart defect that nobody could foretell. Certainly nothing in the family that anybody knew about. It was just a sudden, horrible thing, really. So yeah, shocking to everyone that loved him.
Right, right. Well, that would be exactly. Well, so how had you known Michael Rooney for some time before getting together for the Elevator Mood album?
Yeah, I've known Mickey from way back. I used to buy my records from Mickey. He used to have a record stall, and then he worked in a record shop, and that was a great shop. You know, it was very influential in Glasgow. Listen and Blogs were the two record shops, and Mickey worked. I think he would Listen, and you know, they were always playing great stuff when you went in. Very Mickey's has an encyclopedic knowledge of music, basically. So, uh, yeah, we met back then. I kind of made more firm friends with him in the early 90s when he moved to London. And yeah, we're good mates. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have listening stations at the record store?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they had those. Yeah, and obviously when you're young, you know, having good bargain bins and things, it was
Oh,
just a
right,
brilliant
right,
environment, really. You know?
right.
And a lot of things like people sticking up adverts for guitarists wanted and all that. It was a nice hub. Every scene needs a hub or a few hubs, you know. So that was one of them. You know.
Right, right. Yeah, there was a couple here. One in particular that would have live shows actually in the store too. They would do that,
Yeah,
and then you
that's a
could,
great thing, you know.
yeah, yeah, kind of of
The,
a community. It was like a community for musicians. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well, well, yeah. I used to go, and this one we got a lot of imports. That's where I picked up a lot of, and I got to know the guy, the owner, real well, and he would let me play, try out just about everything, before I
yeah,
bought it. So it was always, and
yeah.
and
That's
a lot of,
always a good
yeah,
idea.
good idea, right? And a lot of times it was just from the cover. The cover is what I went by. Oh, this is a cool looking cover, and it turned out usually it was pretty good. The music was. So
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
I've done that. Everybody, I suppose, has done that. You just take a risk, don't you? Sometimes go, that
yeah,
looks quite cool. So,
right,
yeah.
right. Yeah, you do. So it works out more times than not. Anyway, for me, well, talk about how you and Mickey, you call him Mickey,
Yeah.
uh, how you guys started developing the plan for the Elevator Mood album.
Well, that just came about. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Mickey asked me if I was still playing these days, and I said, yeah, but just in my own room kind of thing. And I said, you're welcome to come round. You know, I'll set up Garage Band and you'll see what we can do. And it went really well. It was quite one of those kind of unrepeatable things. We just sort of sat down and kind of almost like the first song was written that night, you know, and that was very encouraging. So we made it a regular. I think it was a Tuesday night. Mickey used to come around. Both of us are still working. I retired recently. I think Michael's retiring in October, but we were both in full time employment back then, so and families and stuff. So we just made it Tuesday night. Come round, have some tea, and we'll go in my room and kind of set up this setup here, and see what we can do. And before we knew too long, we had more than enough to do some kind of records. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, was the goal from the beginning to do it as a tribute, homage
No,
to
that that came later. I mean, Michael was a great friend of Ian's as well, you know. So when we were thinking about it, we just thought, why not dedicate it to Ian? It's just something there. It's just a nice thing uh, to do, really. You know, it's good to know that something's there with his name on it. Because you're a very special guy, you know. It was just good to do it.
right.
Yeah.
I've read that and I've heard that. Yeah. Well, did you hear from his family? I'm sure they appreciated that.
Yeah, I mean, we're thankfully still very much in touch with Ian's family, his wife Christine, and his daughter Molly, and their son. Um, and yeah, kind of. In fact, Christine's coming over here in a month or so time. So yeah, um, I mean, they haven't mentioned the record particularly. I just think, actually, Christine did say what a nice thing. I forgot about that. She did actually drop me a note. Um, but yeah, as I say, yeah, Ian was a very special human being, you know, to everybody that knew him. A real, I think what he was a guy that made things happen. Yeah.
Right.
In a non-pushy kind of way. You know, he's very people savvy and warm. You know, so yeah,
Right. And every band needs someone like that too.
yeah,
You know. Well, the album did get pretty good reception upon its release too, and even some airplay.
yeah, very much. John Peel, particularly, did us proud with Airplay. A guy that's no longer around, and Alan Freeman as
Yeah.
well. Um, who, you know, his thing was more of a kind of hard rock show on a Saturday, but he played 3 tracks from the album one after the other on his show. So I mean, all that stuff, you know, it was mind blowing
Yeah.
to us. You know, we were so proud of that.
To be played on that. Yeah. And every time I hear it, I get confused. I get Alan Freeman and Alan Freed confused.
Yes, yeah, Alan Freed's the American.
Right.
Yeah,
And
well,
quite
so Alan Freeman was Canadian or something.
I think he I think he was. Yeah. And then he
Yeah,
moved. Yeah. Yeah. But I get those
yeah,
two.
because he was an original kind of BBC One
Yeah.
pop DJ, and then he moved. He became famous for that hard rock show that brought out all the kind of new wave of British metal people like Iron Maiden and things like that. Yeah, so yeah,
Yeah, he did. Yeah, and John Peel, I believe he got his start here in the States in Oklahoma City.
yeah,
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 you know,
yeah.
on
He's
on
because charmed these. I love that bit in his book where he was saying, basically, if you were English and especially if you were from Liverpool, which his
yeah,
family were,
right.
you were in. You know,
Oh
you
yes.
kind of
We welcomed anyone yeah, like
it
that.
was a perfect
So,
time. Yeah.
exactly. We'll talk about what's been happening since that time. What have you been up to?
Not so much musically. I'm just kind of gearing up to doing something, hopefully again with Mickey, and there's another couple of people that I kind of are thinking of doing some stuff with, but I haven't really done anything much since the Elevator Mood thing. Uh, yeah, I'd kind of like to this time maybe take it live as well, just for just to do it again. No other reason than that. I kind of I'm fully aware that there isn't a long pop career ahead of me, you know. So
Yeah.
it's really just for the fun, the hell of
Okay.
doing it now. So kind of really, yeah.
Yeah.
So that stay tuned. Hopefully, in the
Okay.
next 6 months or so, there'll be something to.
Something. Okay. Yeah. John. What was it? John Ravenscraft. That was his.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. That was
Yeah,
his.
John Ravenscroft. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That just came to me. Just hit me in the head like a low flying aircraft. Yeah. Well, so you've been traveling too. Well, traveling, or do you like that, getting out and about?
Traveling.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean now, myself, and my wife, our kids are growing up. Like
Yeah.
to get around, you know, as much as possible. To be honest, we love it.
Yeah. Where did you go recently? Because those are some nice pictures I've seen.
Where have we been recently? Well, our holiday, our summer holiday, was basically we flew to Bordeaux, took a trip on a train to that's a great Scottish band, the Shaking Pyramids. Take a trip on the
Oh,
train. Uh,
okay.
we
Yeah.
we took a trip on the train to San Sebastian,
Yeah.
and then drove from San Sebastian down to southern Spain and Portugal. And that was great. And recently we've been up north in Scotland, which is a thing I want to do a lot more of now I've retired. See a lot more of this country. Um,
I've never been there. I went to Manchester many years ago. But and that was to see the Chameleons.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah, which is my all-time favorite band.
Brilliant.
Mark and the Chameleons. But at the time that we went, me and my brother, was it 2000? It was 2000. They were doing like a last show there at the Witchwood. I remember the place was called the Witchwood. And we thought that would be our last chance to ever see them, because they hadn't come to the States. At that point, they hadn't ever come here. Well, since that time, I've seen him 4 more times here in Dallas. Yeah, but at the time, we have to go over there to see him. He'll never come here, but he has.
Yeah, I'd like to get out to Dallas. Well, actually, Austin sometime. We've got good friends in Austin.
Right. Yeah, and they have a big music scene down there. Have you ever? Well, you haven't been there before, right? To Austin?
No.
Okay. Yeah, you have to go to South by Southwest in March, I think it is.
Right.
Where they have bands from all over the world. I mean, tons. But yeah, my son is going to school. He just started his freshman year at UT, University of Texas. So
wow.
Yeah, we got him moved in last weekend. Yeah, and
it's big time, that, isn't it, in their lives?
Right, it is the empty nest syndrome thing.
For you too, yeah.
That's right. And so my dog misses him, and so he goes and lays on his bed and things like that. It's kind of they know when you're gone.
Definitely. I mean, we lost our faithful Jack. It was a mixed collie.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago now, but he was the same when the kids left. He was wandering around the house, kind of looking for them.
Right.
Wondering why they're not here anymore. Yeah.
Right. When he does come to visit, which I don't know, maybe in a few weeks, his tail will probably be going really fast, jumping up on him. But yeah, that's you're right. They did. It's a Labradoodle is what we have. So
nice dog.
Yeah, it is, and he's very smart. Sometimes too smart for his own good. He's stubborn. Well, anyway, anything else that you would like to mention or add or plug in closing?
Not really. Just to leave the flavor that I'm not the world's most prolific musician. I was in it professionally for 2 years, 3 years. Yeah. I don't consider myself as a great technician or whatever, but what I will say is that playing with the Jolt was just the best fun. We were tight friends from school days, and we had a ball. And I think some of that comes through in the music. It's kind of like my friend Robert put it, we were a tight little gang.
Yeah,
and that was how it felt.
Right. And you're still good pals with him.
Sure. Yeah.
So it becomes a family kind of. You're with each other so much. So, well, that's again. Hopefully that you and Mickey will, do some more together.
Definitely, I think it's pretty much certain we'll do something. And as I say, anything that we put together, I'll send you it.
Oh, yeah, I would appreciate.
Yeah, you leave me your details. Well, I've got your.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah. And you can make your own mind up.
Okay, that's always the best way to do it. Making your own mind. Don't let other people. It's your mind, so make it up. Right. Right.
Totally.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate it, Jim. And
apologies for being late for our original time. I just totally got sidetracked. That's typical me.
Things like that happen. We got together. That's the important thing.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, all the best to you, and keep in touch, and and I'll keep in touch, and I'll send you a copy of this. Like I said, once
that'd be great.
Shouldn't be much to edit. Well, my boo-boos, my brain farts, things like that. I'll have to do something like that. All right. Well, again,
as Nick Lowe said, bash it down and tart it up later.
There you go. I like that. That's a great philosophy. Yes, it is. All right, Jim. All the best to you. Okay.
All the best. Pleasure to meet you, mate.
All right.
Bye now.